Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My name is Lecturer Hussein Hudwan, University of Babylon, College of Engineering and Musayyib, Department of Automobile Engineering. Our lecture today is entitled of Characteristics of Measurement. This belongs to the Department of Automobile Engineering and Department of Energy Engineering. هي خصائص أجهزة القياس للأجهزة الثانوية تكملة للمحاضرات السابقة. The static characteristics, we took accuracy, precision, sensitivity, and resolution and impedance. We reached range, span, hysteresis, and backlash, instrument drift, and linearity, and the threshold or dead space, stability, and tolerance and bias. And the dynamic characteristic, as we showed before, speed of response, fidelity, lag, dynamic error, and the frequency response. The static characteristics and this هذه تكملة للخصائص السابقة. We reached to the sixth one. وصلنا إلى الخاصية السادسة وهي range. The input range defines the minimum and maximum value of the variable to measure the output. Range defines the minimum and maximum value of the signal given by an instrument. Assume a temperature transducer which temperature range is from 100 degrees Celsius to 250 degrees Celsius, and the output range is given from 4 to 10 millivolt. And for span, the second characteristic for secondary measurements instrument, the span is the maximum change of the input, and the output span is the maximum change of the output. And this we can define in these equations: input span I maximum minus I minimum, and output span equal output maximum minus output minimum. The eighth characteristic, hysteresis and backlash. Careful observation of the input-output relationship of a block will sometimes reveal different results as the signals vary in direction of the movement. Mechanical system will often show a small difference in length as the direction of the applied force is reversed. كما نلاحظ هنا يعني الأسنان بعد فترة المسننات في انجيرز في نظام التعشيق للأجهزة الميكانيكية بعد فترة من العمل تبدأ تتآكل. أثناء التآكل تتحرك بعض المسننات ليس بنفس حركتها السابقة، يحدث فارق نتيجة وجود خلوص أو فراغات بين المسننات، وهذه تؤدي إلى شبيه بالصدمات الشوكس. هذه شرحها بالعربي. Hysteresis, the same effect arises as a magnetic field is reversed in a magnetic material. This characteristic is called hysteresis, where this is caused by a mechanism that gives a sharp change, such as caused by the looseness of a joint in a mechanical joint. It is easy to detect any is known as backlash. This is obvious. We can see in this paragraph the maximum output hysteresis and output reading, and curve for variable decreasing, curve for variable increasing. This belongs to the measure variable for the output reading, and maximum input hysteresis were dead space. Dead space هي المنطقة اللي لا يحصل فيها استجابة. There is no response in this area because that is called dead space. And the ninth one characteristic, the instrument drift. This is caused by variation taking place in the parts of the instrumentation over a time. Right sources occurs as mechanical or chemical structural changes and changing mechanical stresses. Drift is a complex phenomenon for which the observed effects are that the sensitivity and offset values vary. It also can alter the accuracy of the instrument differently of the various amplitude of the signal presence. We can see here there's 3 bar graphs, 3 pictures in the down of this slide. We can in the first picture in the left hand side, we can see the scale reading and we see the pressure. Then the scale reading, we see the characteristic with zero drift and nominal characteristic. الخصائص المسمى يعني الخصائص الديزاير اللي نريدها بالخط المنقط، وعندما يكون لا يوجد دريفت there is no zero أو with zero drift، الخصائص تكون بالحقيقة لا تبدأ من الصفر، تبدأ بمقدار من الخطأ أو بمقدار من الانحراف. هذا نتيجة وجود خطأ بالسكيل، فنعمل له معايرة، وهذه المعايرة أو this is called calibration, and this calibration we remove this error to down these devices to take this desired readings of pressure. And in other characteristic we see classification with zero drift and sensitivity drift. The sensitivity drift, it's like deflection with angle, and with some span. It's called classification or characteristics with zero drift and sensitivity drift. And it's very obvious. Linearity الخطية أحيانا تكون الاستجابة الخطية it is normally desirable، وهذا شيء مرغوب فيه that the output reading of an instrument is linearly proportional to the quantity being measured. An instrument considered if the relationship between output and input can be fitted in a line. The output reading minus output minimum equal output maximum minus output minimum divided by input maximum minus input minimum, and this times production by or times by input minus input minimum. Threshold or dead space if the instrument input is increased very gradually، يعني بصورة تدريجية بالتمام يكون الازدياد ماله from zero من الصفر. There will be some minimum value below which no output change can be detected. This minimum value defines the threshold تسمى العتبة of the instrument لجهاز القياس. Alternatively بصورة بديلة تسمى dead space is divided as the range of different input value over which there is no change in output value, as we show in this picture below. The 12th characteristic, static characteristic, stability. It is the ability of an instrument to retain its performance throughout its specified operating life. يعني قابلية لجهاز القياس للاحتفاظ بأدائه خلال الفترة العمر المحدد لجهاز القياس، لأن لكل جهاز قياس يسمى عمر افتراضي، حتى وإن كان طويل أيضا يسمى عمر افتراضي. فالستابيليتي هي قابليته أو قدرته على الاحتفاظ بنفس الأداء، يعني ما يعطي نسبة خطأ لفترة العمر الافتراضي اللي يعيشها الجهاز، أو اللي الجهاز يبقى يعطي نفس الأداء عند قياس عند عمله بقياس الكميات أو النوعيات اللي مراد من قياسها. Tolerance, the maximum allowable error in the measurement is specified in terms of some value which called tolerance, and the 14th one, bias, the constant error that exists over the full range of measurement of the instrument is called bias. Such a bias can be completely eliminated by calibration. The zero error is an example of bias which can be removed by calibration. Measurement outcomes are nearly static over time. They will possess a dynamic component that must be understood for correct interpretation of the results. For example, a trace made on an ink pen chart recorder will be subjected to the speed at which the pen can be follow the input signal changes. Instrumentarily responds to the instantaneous changes in the measured variable. Their response is slow or sluggish due to mass, thermal capacitance, electrical capacitance, inductance, etc. Sometimes even the instrument has to wait for some time until the response happens. This type of instruments are normally used for the measurement of quantities that fluctuates with time, the behavior of such a system, whereas the input varies from instant to instant. The output also varies from instant to instant. It's called a dynamic response of the system. Hence, the dynamic behavior of the system is also important as the static behavior. The dynamic inputs are of two types: transient and static period, and transient response. The variation in the input that used particularly to achieve a dynamic behavior are step input and ramp input. The input linearly changes with respect to time. Parabolic input, the input varies to the square time. And sinusoidal input, the input changes in accordance with a sinusoidal function. The dynamic characteristic, speed of response, fidelity, lag, as we mentioned before, dynamic error and frequency response. Speed of response defined as the rapidity with which an instrument responds to the changes in measured quantity. It shows how active and fast the system. Fidelity defines as the degree to which the measurement system is capable of faithfully responding or reproducing the changes in output depend on input without any dynamic error. The lag, every system requires its own time to respond to the changes input. This time is called as lag. Retraction lag, as soon as there is changes in the measured quantity, the measurement system begins to respond. Time delay, the response of the measurement system starts with after a dead time. And dynamic error, it is the difference between the true value of the quantity that we measure changing with time and the measured value and so on. Frequency response, dynamic characteristic, refers to the response of an instrument to continuously changing input and so on. And zero order instrument, the simplest model for measurement system is a zero order differential equation, y equal kx. Frequency response and zero order instrument like potentiometer, and we explained this before and we showed this before. And thanks for attention. Any question you can text me.